Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Phay, and welcome to the channel. So, why did Sweden start painting barcodes on the sides of their battleships? So they could Scandinavian. Today, we're taking a look at Black Orchestra from Starling Games. Black Orchestra from Starling Games is a game designed by Philip Newberry and it's for 1 to 5 players. And in this game, basically, you are trying to assassinate Hitler. All right, what's a better theme than that, right? So in this game, you're going to have X number of actions. You're going to be moving around Berlin, the countryside. You're going to be gathering different conspirator cards that you're going to add to your dossier. You're going to try plot attempts to try to assassinate Hitler. If you can meet all the criteria, you're rolling dice. You're trying to keep Hitler's military support low. Oh, there is so much going on in this game because on top of that, you have to make sure your motivation is high, but you got to make sure your suspicion is low. Okay, so I'll tell you what. Let me explain how the game is played, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so to play the game, the first thing you have to do is set it up. So to set up the game, fold the board out, okay? And what you're gonna do is you can take all the item tokens, put them upside down, shuffle them around, and you're gonna see little square on all the locations or most of the locations on the board. Make sure that you fill all those locations with the different items that you currently have. Place Hitler and all of his deputies in all of their starting locations. And then for every player that's going to be in the game, what you're going to do is you're going to give them a starting color. They're going to take their pawn, they're going to put it in the train station. And then what they're going to do is they're going to look at all the different characters and they're going to figure out who they want to play. Now, there's 3 different types of characters. There's what the Abwehr, the civilians, and then the Wehrmachten. And I know I said probably half of those wrong, but I'm bad with German. Okay, German's not a language for me. Anyways, you're going to figure out what you're going to play. And I highly recommend that if you're playing in a 3 or more player game, you have at least one of each character type out there. It's going to really help in the plot attempts. And I'll cover those more here in just a little bit. Okay, but figure out what your characters are and then you're ready to go. All right, so what can you do on your game and how do you play this game? Now, I'm going to say this up front. One of the things I love about this game is I love this game board. This game board has everything you need on it to play the game. It's got the descent track. It tells you exactly what to do on the descent track if you put dice up there and you meet the requirements. It has your prison. When you're in prison, what happens? When you're attempting to plot, what happens? On your turn, all of your actions, and even for your conspire action and your release action, what happens and how do you do those actions? And it even shows you the icons. This game board is phenomenal, fantastic, absolutely love it, and I think it just looks gorgeous on top of that. However, on your turn, what are you going to do? You're going to take a number of actions, okay? And all the actions, like I said, are over on the side of the board unless you're in prison. Prison's a little different. I'll cover prison more at the end of this. Okay, so on your turn, you're going to check for a couple things. You have 3 actions. You can collect an item. If you're in the space that has a face-up item, you can just pick it up and you can put it in the item space on your board, okay? Now, the character boards, I didn't talk about this, but they all are going to start on the very bottom. I think they're timid, and they're going to start on level 2 for their suspicion, okay? Now, when you're timid, you only have a hand limit of 2 for your dossier. So if you want to get conspirator cards, then you're only going to be able to have 2. You need to be able to get that up a little bit higher in order to get your special ability and or get your hand limit up higher based on your player count. Okay, but the other thing you can do is you can conspire. Now, conspire seems to be the trickier action of all of the different actions. So I'm going to cover that a little bit here. You can only conspire once per turn. That's it. Now, when you conspire, what you do is you figure out how many actions do you want to spend to conspire. For every action you want to spend, you're going to roll a dice. So say at the beginning of my turn, I have 3 actions. I want to spend all 3 of my actions to conspire. So for each action, I'll grab a dice. I'm going to take 3 dice and I'm going to roll those dice. Based on what you get on those dice depends on what's going to happen. For every target symbol you get, those dice are going to go in the descent track, and I'll cover that here in a minute. For every eagle you get, your suspicion is going to go up 1. If your suspicion is already high, nothing happens. Also, anybody in your space their suspicion is going to go up if you roll those eagles as well. So when you want to conspire, you may not want to do it when other people are in your area unless you just want to take that chance. Then you have the numbers. Whatever the number is, well, that's how many actions you're now going to have to take for this turn. So say, for example, on your 3 actions, you roll all 3 of your dice. So you get 1 descent, 1 eagle, and a 3. All right. Well, your descent dice goes up on the top, your suspicion goes up 1, and you still have 3 actions that you can take this turn. Do your actions. What else can you do? You can deliver an item. So all the locations on the board that have items on them, okay, if the item has been removed, you'll see where it's got some text that tells you what item you can deliver. So when you deliver an item, you just discard that item and you get to do whatever it says. And usually it's reducing your suspicion back down, because that's one of the keys of this game, is keeping that suspicion low. You have your dossier, okay? Your dossier is basically going to allow you, when you do that action, you just draw a card, add it to your dossier. Remember, you have a hand limit of 2. Now, there's a couple different types of cards. There's some cards that are going to have a little action symbol on them, okay, which means you can spend an action to take that. There's some that are going to have a little lightning bolt, which means it's an instant. You can play that at any time, okay, and you can usually play those also on other people's turns. You're also going to have illegal cards. Illegal cards, sometimes are actions, sometimes are going to be instants that are going to help on plot attempts. That's the biggest thing with the illegal cards, is they help on plot attempts, but they can be very dangerous later on in the game, okay. You can move. You can go from one location to another. Just follow the white little dots. Now, if you're in Berlin and the train station, you notice they're all green. Everything in Berlin is adjacent to each other. So if you're at the train station, you're adjacent to all locations. If you're at any location, you're adjacent to all green locations. Okay. So moving in Berlin is very, very fast. You can go from the train station to any location, back to the train station, and then you're back out on the board. Okay. You can do a release action. Release is getting someone out of prison. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to go to the Gestapo HQ, spin an action, roll the dice. If you roll an eagle, you're imprisoned as well. If you don't roll an eagle, okay, then whoever is in prison comes out of prison and their suspicion is set at high, and they can now take actions on their turn. So if they're the person that's trying to do the plot, you're going to want to get them out of prison, okay? You can reveal an item. If you go to a location that has a face down item for an action, you can flip it up and it can be face up. Okay, and now you can actually take it for another action, or you can transfer. If you're in the same space as somebody else, you can transfer 1 item or 1 dossier card per action you spend. So you may have a whole bunch of items you want to give somebody, but it would take 1 action to give all those different items. Okay. Also, the big thing with the release is, remember, if you're an extreme suspicion, you can't go to Gestapo HQ and get somebody else out. You're just going to get arrested immediately. Don't even try it. Okay. But that's basically what you're going to do on your turn. The other thing you can do is you can attempt to plot. Okay, now, if you have a plot card, the plots are basically going to have 2 different sides to them, and they're going to basically tell you how you can get dice to attempt your plot. Okay, some are going to say that most of the time they're going to say Hitler has to be in a certain location, you got to be in his location. Okay, some of them are going to have say he's got to be in a fortified area. Now you'll see on the board where there's the eagle over the little castle. Those are the fortification areas. Okay, that would be if he has to be in a fortified area or a non-fortified area. Okay, you look and see if it has that symbol. All right. Otherwise, on the right-hand side, you're going to look at those over there. If you're a particular race, sometimes they'll say, hey, if you're a civilian, you're going to get a dice. If you discard a weapon, you're going to get a dice. Okay, so attempted to plot. They have a nice little description, example of how to get all your dice and everything else. Okay, then what's going to happen is you get your dice pool, you roll your dice, okay, and then you're going to compare how many targets you get to the number of targets equal to wherever Hitler's military support is. And that's the number you need. Now, if you roll eagles, now you have to look at your suspicion track, because your suspicion, if it's too high and you roll eagles, okay, then what's going to happen is you're going to be potentially caught, all right? Or sometimes you can actually just fail the plot, but it's going to tell you on the side exactly how to do that, okay, and what needs to happen. But when your turn's done, okay, you've spent all your actions, now what you're going to do is you're going to draw an event card. Now, there's 7 stages in this game. And below every one of the stage locations, there's a number of icons, okay? And that's going to say how many Gestapo HQ cards are potentially in that deck, okay? Because every one of these decks are shuffled, and then 2 cards are randomly removed. So early on, there's only like 1 or 2 Gestapo raid cards, okay? But stages 7, 6, and 5, there can be potentially 3 Gestapo raid cards. If a Gestapo raid card is ever drawn, if you are at extreme suspicion, you're arrested, okay? Don't get arrested. If everybody gets arrested, game's over, okay? Can't let it happen, all right? Otherwise, it's going to say what to do. If you have illegal cards, you have to discard those illegal cards. If you want to keep them, then you have to raise your suspicion for every illegal card you do want to keep, okay? Follow those, and then it's going to go into the current event. there's also key events that you're going to come up with, and they'll say key event on them. Okay. It just goes in the current event. Once it's done, once the next card is drawn, the key event slides off to the side. If there's a yellow bar across the top that says if the key event is in play, discard this card, which means you would discard it and draw another card. And it's going to cycle through that deck even faster, all right, and get you along. The other thing with moving that I didn't cover as well is when you want to move, you're going to notice there's a lot of numbers on here. Okay, Berlin B. You can always go to Berlin, and you can always go into the ones, which are the orange. Okay, but until the current event for the next stage 2 is revealed, you can't go to the area 2s. Same with areas 3s, 4s, 5s. Okay, you have the event for that stage has to be displayed before you can go to those areas. And if you ever get to event 7, anybody that happens to be in a location that has the 7 with the circle crossed off has to move out of there, including Hitler and all his deputies. They have to move to the closest area outside of those 7s. Okay, because that basically means that everybody's moving in on the Germans, and they're kind of shrinking. So that's the cool thing about this game is it shows how Germany's expanding its military forces, but then when you get to stage 7, well, now they're getting compressed all back in. Okay, but that's it. All right, you're going to keep going round and round and round, and the game is going to keep going until one of a couple things happen. A, everybody's arrested, game's over. Or B, somebody happens to do their plot attempt, complete their plot, and if they successfully complete the plot, assassinate Hitler, you win Black Orchestra. All right, folks, there you go. That was a real high level how to play the game. I cover for the most part the majority of the rules. There's a few things that I kind of want to cover, like prison. I didn't cover prison during the actual rules itself because I want to go more detail in that because I honestly really like the way they do the whole prison thing and everything else. And let's just start with that, okay? Because it's kind of one of my favorite things about this game. So you never want to go to prison. You really, really, really do not ever want to go to prison because getting out of prison, you either have to wait till somebody's turn and they go up there and try to get you out, or it's your turn and you're stuck in prison. Now, when you're in prison, there's only 2 things you can do, period. You can't play any of your cards to help any of your opponents, okay? Or anything like that because, well, hey, you know what? You're in prison. But in prison, all you get to do is you get to draw an interrogation card from the interrogation deck. Now, the thing with those interrogation cards is you're going to draw that card, you're going to look at it, you're going to read it. And there's going to be 3 options on there, options A, B, and C. Most of the time, option C is you're going to roll a dice and deal with what it is. A's and B's are usually something really bad that's going to happen that may or may not get you out of prison. Okay, so that's what you have to do is you have to figure out what do you want to do. Now, if you select an option, one of the options, you have to fully be able to complete those options like A's and B's. You have to fully be able to do that. Okay, so it says, if for some reason it says you have to be able to discard this and you're released from prison. If you can't discard X, well, you can't get released from prison because you're not, turning over that information type thing. Okay, so you have to be able to fully complete it. Now, the bottom of those cards is usually going to be roll a dice, accept your fate, but there's usually an option in there that's going to get you out of prison. All right, and do you want to take that chance? It's 4 or 5 and 1 in 6 chance or a 2 in 6 chance that it's going to happen. You never really know, but something bad could happen. Depends on what you roll. Now, the thing I like about those cards is you cannot say anything about that card, period, whatsoever. If that card says you have to discard somebody else's card or another card in play, you don't get to talk to the people and say, hey, who wants to lose this? No, you just start looking at everything, you figure out what you want to do, and you do it. Okay, take that card, it discards to a face down pile, so no one will ever see that card. No one's ever going to see the options you had to choose or anything else. Okay, they're not going to see the things that you chose not to do. They only get to see what the consequences of your action is and whether you are released from prison or not released from prison. That is it. I love that. I think that is so absolute. It's just super cool. I really, really love that. Okay. One of my favorite things about the game, the conspirator deck, and being able to get your character up to the point where you can get at least 5 cards in your dossier, or based on your player count, how you get into your max hand limit. Boy, having as many cards as possible in your dossier is really, really super critical because those cards are so powerful. They're going to give you a bunch of different actions that may prevent Hitler from moving. They may say, hey, you know what? You don't have to draw an event card this turn or something else because you're going to go into the next stage potentially or something else. You never know. You may be set up to do a plot. Draw an event card may move Hitler and all his deputies or something along those lines. You don't want that to happen. So you're like, oh, you know what? don't do this, he's going to try a plot. We should be good to go. There's so many dossier cards that do so many different things. There's so many plots in there. And I will tell you this, the plots, some are good, some are meh, okay? But there's a wide variety of different things that you can do, okay? Absolutely love that. Really, really cool stuff. Moving around the board, everything in Berlin being adjacent to each other, and the fact that you can pretty much use almost every space if you discard the correct number of item to lower your suspicion. Is also really good, because keeping that suspicion down low is really key, but also keeping Hitler's military support down low is really key as well. Okay, another one of those really interesting things that you got to watch. Now, I personally like to do the conspire almost every single turn. I almost always use all 3 of my actions, do this and take my chances. And one of the reason is because of that descent track. Okay, that descent track, once you put the 3rd dice on that descent track, you immediately get to do one of 2 things. Okay, you either 1, lower Hitler's military support by 1, or you can raise any one character in the game's motivation by 1. So that actually may move their motivation up to, they may be now motivated, which means there's a special ability they have. That's really cool. Every character has a different special ability, and having those special abilities, you use them, could also be very key in winning this game. All right. Now, the other thing is you have to make sure that you have your character at, possibly reckless, or I can't even remember the next step above, or below reckless. Okay. So you have to be at 1 step above motivated or potentially higher in order to attempt your plots. Okay. So using that descent track to be able to move somebody up to make sure they're high enough is great. Okay. Absolutely super, super cool. All right. The last really neat, really cool thing I'm going to talk about is I absolutely love the event cards at the end of everybody's turn. Those cards are brutal. You're going to draw those cards. A lot of times they're going to move Hitler and they're going to move all his deputies. They're going to move them bouncing all over the board. Okay. And the more players are in the game, the more they're going to bounce around, possibly before it gets to your turn. Now, there's pros and cons to that. One of the cons is if you start your turn and you're in the space with one of the deputies, all right, well, now you have a negative effect. You may not be able to conspire this turn, or you may not be able to use your special motivated ability this turn, or something along those lines. You may lose an item this turn, okay? So you never want to start your turn in a space with one of the deputies, okay? You got to be careful of that. But just because you end your turn in an empty space doesn't necessarily mean a deputy is not going to show up in your space by the time it gets back to your turn. So you never know what's going to happen there. A lot of times those event cards, they're going to raise Hitler's military support. Okay, you get Hitler's military support down to 3 because the next guy is going to go ahead and do a plot attempt to draw a card, and now it goes up by 1 or 2. Now you got to hope he can maybe conspire, bring that back down, because maybe having a 4 or 5 or something like that is going to be just too many bullseyes. He's not going to have enough dice. It's one of those things you got to pay attention to. Okay, I like how there's key events. All right, unless that main key event comes out. All right. And if it is out, then you're starting to discard those cards even faster. Well, that just moves it along the track, and gets you closer and closer to the end game. Now, one of the things about stage 7, and I didn't talk about, is potentially there could be a card in there that just instantly ends the game. You lose. Now, like I said, 2 cards are removed from every one of those decks. That could be one of those cards. That card could be on the very top. That card could be close to the bottom. You do not know where it is. All you know is when you get to stage 7, the game could end at the end of any player's turn, because if that card's in there, you never know. There's potentially 3 Gestapo raids in that deck as well. A lot of stuff could happen. It's just you want to try to get Hitler assassinated definitely before stage 7. The earlier in the game you can attempt the assassination, the easier it is. Okay, later on in the game it does get harder. Now I know in some of the later stage games that Hitler's military support sometimes will actually start moving down as well, because everyone's closing in on him. So it kind of helps you move it along. All right. So much good in this game. A lot of really good stuff. Now, items you got to be very careful of. Okay, there's, if I remember right, I think 3 of every item in that you put on the board in the game. Okay, and the cool thing about the items is they're going to have letters underneath them. Now, those letters are going to correspond to the plots. Okay, so when you see, like a map and it's got letters underneath it, all right, it's going to say, hey, if it's, if the plot has this letter on it, you're going to be using it for those plots. Different plots are going to require different things. So if you do a plot attempt and that particular plot attempt used weapons, say on weapons, it had a little asterisk that says you can use multiple weapons, but somebody used 2 weapons, and now you just drew another plot, okay, that also requires weapons. Well, there's maybe only 1 more out there, unless for some way you can get that one back out that's been removed from the game. Okay, you know the weapons are going to be hard to use, so you might have to try to find another way to do it, poison or something else along those lines. Okay, um, so you really have to pay attention to what everyone's doing. You really have to work together in this game. You gotta talk things through. You got to figure out what everyone's going to do, and you have to work together. This is a phenomenal co-op game. If you're playing this game and when it's somebody else's turn and they just disengage themselves from the game, to me it's an injustice, because this is a game that everybody really should try to work together, talk through your turns, try to figure out what you want to do. But there you go. Okay, Black Orchestra. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I actually reviewed the expansion, but I never reviewed the core game. This is one of my favorite co-op games. When I first played this game, a buddy of mine had it. He brought it over and says, "Hey, I have this game, Black Orchestra. You want to play it?" I'm like, "Nah." I looked at it. It looked really interesting. As soon as we got done playing this game, I'm like, I need this game. I jumped online. I bought the game. I bought the character expansion packs for this game. I bought everything there was. And I have been playing a ton of this ever since. I played this game a lot. I have the expansion for this game, which adds even more good stuff. This is one of my favorite cooperative games. I love the theme. I love the gameplay. This is phenomenal. If you like really good worker placement games, you like historical type games, this is a great game, and I cannot recommend this one enough. You need to get this game. Well, thank you once again for joining me today. As always, I please ask if you like this video on YouTube, Board Game Geek, Facebook, or even on X. Please leave me a comment on any one of those platforms, and I'll get to those comments as soon as I can. And also, folks, if you like the videos that I do here, if you haven't done so already, I humbly ask you to click on that subscription button and even click on that bell and be notified when I drop new videos. And if you like the videos I do here, I also post videos over on the Discriminating Gamers channel. Over there, we'll do some unboxings, playthroughs, and reviews. I'll leave a link to Cody's channel down in the details below. You know, I don't trust stairs. They're always up to something.